What's up, guys? This is Coast, your boy Coast, coming back with another tutorial. This time a little bit different from the last one that I've done. Again, apologise for the quality of the mic. It is awful, I know that. But yeah, this tutorial, just wanted to talk through the principles and technique of how you could extract a acapella from an instrumental, or an instrumental from an acapella. So let's just get straight into it. So as you can see here, I've got an acapella and a beat. I'll just play that for a bit. Solo that. Let's just mute these two so you can see clearly. They should know we read my card. Can't get ready to run them out from here to my car. Kangal no business, everybody dead. We try to hold the peace and why most now we heard. We just decide to robot from head down to Z. Pieces wake up a shot and means he's ahead. We no business, the whole of them gone. Let's shop once we go back in. Yep, so that sounds good. Here I have an acapella. Hey yo, hello, you know it's Warlord and Kangal. No business, everybody dead. We try to hold the peace and why bossing now we heard. And here I have an instrumental. Now I do see this question pop up quite a lot. It's one of the ones that I had when I sort of first started producing, and asked, is it possible to extract a acapella from a song? The answer is yes and no. And when I say yes, it's just a little bit difficult. Reason being is that you need the instrumental and the track with the vocals on it, and both of them need to be the same quality. So yeah, I mean, short answer is yeah, if you've got the right sort of tools, i.e. the actual tune and either the acapella and the tune, if you just want the rhythm, the beat behind it, or you will need the instrumental and the song if you want the acapella behind it. It sounds quite complicated, I know, but if you bear with me, what I will try to do is explain the theory behind this. Now I will say straight up, it's very, very rarely 100% perfect. You will 9 times out of 10 get some bleed through, and if you've got any acapellas in your collection, quite a large collection of acapellas like I've got, you will find some of those acapellas, especially the non-official sort of bootleg ones. Excuse me. The non-official bootleg ones will have kind of like a phasey, kind of low quality, low hi-fi sound to them, lo-fi sound to them. And I will try and go over to the reasons as to why that is, and basically explain a little bit of theory about what this sort of method is composed of. Shouldn't be too long one. It's just quite sort of easy to explain, but you do need to wrap your head around it a little bit. So the theory behind this is, let's take I wonder if I've got a sine wave. Straight sine wave. That's not a sine wave. That'll do. So if I take this sine wave, standard C, as you can see, nice pure tone. Now, if I play this, you will hear it. There we go, sine wave, we've all heard one before. Now, what you might not know is if I take that sine wave, duplicate it, and reverse the phase of the second one and play them both together, you don't hear anything. Now, why is that? Basically, what's happening is, if you can't really see it, let me bounce this second sine wave. So all I've done is I've got a sine wave here, nothing, no effects on it, anything, and on the second duplicate sine wave, I've just reversed the phase. So what that means is instead of these going up and down, they now go down and up. And if I was to bounce out this second one, you will see that, but you can't see it at the moment because the phase is on. So if I just freeze this track, flatten it, and now if I zoom in, you will see they are 180 degrees out of phase. So you can see they're completely the polar opposite. Now, the best way I had this sort of explained to me was, imagine you've got a speaker. Okay, might need to kind of see if I can paint. So imagine you've got your speaker, right? I know it's an awful shape of a speaker, but that's the speaker cone. So that's the big circle thing in the middle of your speaker, looking at it from the side. Now, if you imagine this bit here is controlled by a little magnet round about here that pushes it forward and pulls it back. Okay, so let's imagine this line, it represents 0. Okay, so when your speaker, imagine this is this kind of front part of the speaker, this little section here, again facing the side. When it's level with these two lines, it's a 0, so that will be your speaker's standard. So when your speaker's off, it's in the middle. Now, if you try and imagine this sine wave, a sine wave is, I don't know, I'll give you a brief explanation on hertz. So a hertz, one cycle, people say 200 hertz, 300 hertz, that sort of thing. What that basically means, a hertz is one cycle per second. So it takes 1 second. If something's at 30 hertz, let's say this C is at 30 hertz, that means that this cycle moves up and down 30 times in 1 second. Okay, if it's at 40 hertz, it will move up and down 40 times in 1 second. And if you try and imagine like this up and down, this may not be completely accurate, but for the tutorial, it might kind of make sense. So if you imagine every time the wave pushes up, this up bit here, the speaker goes out. And every time the speaker goes down, every time this wave cycle goes down, it's going back. Okay? So, I don't want to save it, I want a new one. It's just... Okay, so now we know when the wave goes up, the speaker goes out. When the wave goes down, the speaker goes back. So what happens if you've got one sine wave doing that, and another sine doing that? You get the result that we saw earlier of they cancel each other out because they're 180 degrees out of phase. So they will cancel each other out. Now you can actually use this in a very interesting way to make acapellas. So if you imagine you've got your instrumental acapella here, right, and your instrumental here. Now, the same thing will apply. It can be a little bit tricky to explain sometimes, but I'm trying my best. Bear with me. So, if I duplicate the instrumental, it's not just sine waves that this works with. Obviously, if I were to play these two instrumental tracks together now, what would happen is basically both waveforms would be on top of each other. They would be doing that, which completely the opposite of making them silent. It will just make them louder, right? Because you've got two signals exactly the same on top of each other, thus making the volume, the amplitude louder. Now, so just to demonstrate that, I'll turn both of these down a little bit, and I'll play one on its own and then both together. It's a sound you've heard a million times. And then if I add this one in, it's louder. Same thing, if I were to reverse the phase using these little phase buttons, if you see a circle with a line through it like that, that just means reversing the phase, and some plugins have a thing where you can do it on either the left channel or the right channel or both. Can be quite useful, especially if you're checking things like phase alignments of kicks. So your kick and your phase, your kick and your bass are out of phase. You can flip the phaser one, and if it sounds better, you can keep it like that. So yeah, if I turn the phase off, turn the phase 180 degrees opposite for one of these tracks, again you will hear silence. Yet you can see from the meters that both are playing individually. But by the time they're bussed to the master, they cancelled each other out. So although they're playing on each channel, when they get summed to the master, they're being phased out. Now again, you can use this technique to isolate. So imagine you've got one instrumental and one acapella, or one instrumental with the vocal on top. Okay, so you've got one instrumental, no acapella or anything, and you've got one full song with the vocals and the instrumental. Now, if you were to, I can play that for you now actually. So let's play the actual song a second. It's just, can't always see the blue, so if I just turn all those off, now if I just play this top one. Find a good bit, I like this one.
We no business, the whole of them gone. Let shop force you go back in on the mountain, go farm. Come back, put up resistance, tonight them a go bam. Can't go the one go get. We no business, we no farm. Yeah, we no business, the whole of yellow. We no business, the whole.
Now so yeah, just the beat and the vocals, and on this one I've got just the instrumental without any vocals. Just drag both of these side by side so you can see. Again, you can hear a little bit of bleed because I've done this before and the instrumentals and the acapella wasn't that great when I first got them. There was already a little bit of bleed, but for the sake of showing you guys how this is done, it doesn't really matter. So this is, for all effective purposes, just the instrumental track. So, vocal and instrumental. Oh, turn the volume to match. That is important. I'll explain that later. And just the instrumental. Instrumental and vocal. Just instrumental. Now, using what we described earlier, using my amazing drawing skills in Paint, I'm going to flip the phase of just the instrumental. Okay, and then we're going to listen to them both together at the same volume. They have to both be at exactly the same volume and exactly the same quality. So if you've got two different sources, I'll go into that a little bit later. But yeah, if I play them, you've essentially got the actual acapella itself. Again, that can be done if you just want, if you've got an acapella of something, and you've got an acapella, a vocal track and a instrumental on the same track, like number one. No, not you, just you. So you've got the instrumental and the vocal, and then a track with just the acapella. You can actually phase mute, for lack of a better term, the acapella to get just the instrumental. So yeah, I mean, I hope I've explained that sort of competently enough. It's a bit tricky to explain sometimes. It's kind of simple when you understood it though. But yeah, there are a couple of things to bear in mind if you're going to ever use this process. So number one would be the instrumental and the acapella that you have to be of the same quality. Obviously, if you've imagined that you've got, like, every time you do something to a waveform, it changes the waveform slightly. So if you've got a waveform at less bits, or if you've got a waveform at less hi-fi fidelity, let's say you've got the instrumental at, a 320 MP3, and you've got the acapella at a WAV file, 44.1. They're going to look at the phases of the waveforms aren't going to cancel each other out because they're slightly different. Second thing to remember is they have to be perfectly in time. So if one's a little bit too fast or one's a little bit too slow, some of the vocals will start bleeding in. So they have to be exact. So if you're matching the acapella to the acapella and instrumental, the normal actual song, it will have to be exactly in time. So yeah, quality is important. They have to be the same quality. If you're going to do this, you need to do it with a WAV and a 2 WAVs or 2 MP3s or 2 whatever you want to try and do. So that can make it tricky. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of songs out there that have, they'll do an instrumental version and then they'll do an instrumental, the actual just normal song. So you can actually use that technique, because like if you were to buy that from Beatport or something and you bought the instrumental version and you bought the vocal version, you should just be able to flip the phase of the instrumental version and you would essentially have an acapella. But again, because they're going to both be the same quality, I imagine. If they're coming from the same place, they would be bounced out pretty much at the same sort of 44.1 high resolution sort of WAV file. So yeah, you can do it that way. Can be a bit tricky to get right. It's not ideal in a lot of situations. That's why a lot of people don't do it, but it can actually be done. So if you've got any questions, comments, leave them in the description box. If you like the tutorials that I'm sort of doing, I'm happy to carry on doing more. Probably do some like drum and bass ones, making a track from scratch, different basses, that sort of thing. So yeah, if you guys like that, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next, and yeah, peace out.